welcome to the first episode of Sometimes Weekly Sports and Stuff here on KC Sports Network, coming to you from the Event Center here at Holladay Distillery in Weston, Missouri. And I am BJ Kissel, joined by a couple of special friends today, and the founders of the KC Pioneers, and Mark Josey and Sam Kulikov. Guys, I am excited to talk to you guys today. We talked about this before we were recording, respect the hell out of what you guys have been building, what you've been doing. And I'm excited to learn about esports and about the Pioneers today. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Really looking forward to it.
And before we get started, in case anyone was curious, we have got some delicious beverages, thanks to our friends here at Holladay Distillery. This is Triple Crown whiskey, little fresh peach, little fresh lemon, a little cinnamon, and a little Platte County whiskey as well. This thing is absolutely delicious.
It's phenomenal.
Yep, perfect on ice.
If we record for a while, this episode could get a lot of fun later today.
There's more back there too.
But let's get into this stuff, because I think we were talking about it before, and full disclosure, from the moment we first started talking, I don't know a ton about esports or the Pioneers. I respect what you guys are doing in the community and all that, but I want to learn more about what the Pioneers is and how, as a native Kansas Citian who loves everything and takes pride in being from Kansas City, that we've got a new thing that I don't particularly understand, but I want to learn more about. Let's just start. How did you guys put this together, and what was kind of the spirit behind the decision to bring an esports team here to Kansas City?
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Do it.
Let's do it. So Lorenzo Brown, LJ Brown, young African-American kid, says, hey, I want to start an esports org. There's not a lot of people that look like me in a leadership, capacity. There's not a lot of the Midwest is underserved in terms of like esports and gaming, and said we should do something and bring to Kansas City, right? So he actually knew Sam from a while, and our marketing agency, we thought we could tell a story and go like, wow, this is really cool. It's really interesting that, definitely the Midwest is underserved as it relates to gaming and esports. Definitely, we respect the diversity, equity, inclusion, and, access, and thought, what a great story. Let's tell it. So we started telling the story, Sam and I, and then thought, well, we should go much deeper and wider here. Like, this is really cool. And then it went like, let's get really serious about it. And then so we had a conversation, and Sam and I come on board, and we thought, okay, like, now how do we do this? Right. So there's 5 founders, or LJ's a founder, and there's 4 additional other people that came on like literally day one, we'll call it, right? And then just went, okay, now what, right? Like, we have the 2017 Madden champion here. Like, he's got this huge belt, and it's like, throw it over your shoulder or whatever. And he happens to be from Kansas City, and that was kind of the start of it, Beast Mode Mac. And then thought like, well, that's one cool part. And then you start researching, and you're like, hey, we can build a community, we can build a brand, we can, do better inside our community, right? Community means different things to different people, but, like, we can bring people in that reflect the community in which we serve, and we can do that through this really interesting platform called gaming. And then so you do exactly what you would think you would do in startup mode, to say like, how do we go find talent inside the org? How do we go find talent on the proverbial field, right? And then how do we go build a brand and connect that back to, the mission and vision?
And so when you guys talk about like building teams out, it's game specific. You talk about having the Madden champion. I know that like Rocket League, and you've got different sports. So how is it kind of structured with the different, athletes, the different gamers that you guys sign that are members of the Pioneers team? Just how is that kind of broken up for people from the outside, as far as knowing like people have like their specific game that, like, I'm a professional for this game? Just how is that all set up? How does that work?
Yeah, I think a couple things. So the Kansas City Pioneers were a gaming lifestyle, branding, community-driven organization. And that means a couple things. It means, one, we have professional athletes playing under very specific sports, right? They're like not multi-dimensional. I mean, everybody plays different games, but they're really good at a few things, right? Mm-hmm. And we have Rocket League. We have Women's Rocket League. We have Madden, which I mentioned. We have a Valorant team. We have a Call of Duty team. We have a Halo team, and we have a Gears of War team. So best analogous thing would be like if the Kansas City Pioneers owned all of the, professional orgs here. That's what we do, right? Different sports, different fans, different core competencies, different sponsors and or skill sets, etc. So that's number one, right? And then there's also content creators that may or may not have a sport that they're really good at, but also build their individual community, make content. Think of like YouTube meets Twitch meets watch me play, watch me talk about playing, etc. Yeah, and then there's a lot of content that goes into making all that stuff, right? To behind the scenes, like there's accountants, right? There's a legal department, right? There's creative, an entire creative. Sam's our chief marketing officer, so he runs like some heavy lifting on the side of our business, and then we also have a chief gaming officer, which exactly what you would think is responsible for all those verticals and segments of those sports. So we do exactly like what the Royals would do. We go out and recruit, and we look for different players, and we try to find some magic between different people, right? Versus go out and, put capital in looking for the best player at the best time in the best sport at the best moment, right? Like that would be great.
There's strategy to it.
There is strategy to it, right? There's like self-imposed salary caps, right? Like, and really it's limited by either a franchise fee of what you might be in, whether it's like League of Legends or Overwatch. We're talking like, millions and millions of dollars. Call of Duty League, like 25 million all the way up to $100 million just to say, hey, you can have a team, BJ. You're like, cool, sound good? Yeah, right. And then all the way to like, specific sports by the publisher, etc. So
yeah, it blows my mind just because it was it seemed like a niche thing for so many people that's now becoming more mainstream. And it just the blending of YouTube and Twitch and gaming, and the fact that even like our podcasts are going out through, I call it the Twitch because I don't understand it. The Twitch. But like, it's just everything's kind of molding and melding together. And I know from a marketing standpoint, the stuff that you guys have done and the way that you have kind of taken ownership and just, I don't say pride of being from Kansas City, but you're putting Kansas City on the map through the esports kind of vision. And just why was that important to you, and how are you seeing that in like kind of the way that you see the world through esports and gaming and marketing and all that stuff? Like, how is that kind of coming to fruition from the gaming world, kind of seeing Kansas City in a way they hadn't seen it before you guys did this?
Yeah, well, I think that it speaks to kind of our philosophy with approaching it from a strategic perspective and then finding those tactical inputs. So what I mean by that is with Mark and his saying of KC founded but globally driven, right? That's important to us because we know that there's a local market, and that's a powerful market. And we're from here. This is our home. Like that means a lot of different things. But at the same time, there's also an international market, and there's a lot of money to be made, and there's a lot of championships to be made in different countries and different sports and different disciplines, right? So we looked at that and said, okay, here's two different bodies that we need to attack basically as an organization, and we need to do it in a connected way. We don't want it to be disparate and disconnected, right? So we wanted to approach it and say, okay, we want to have an impact locally in a real way, right? So that renders itself through our partnerships with some of our community partners, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but then also all of our initiatives that we embark on. So we're, very passionate about supporting everything from LGBTQIA plus initiatives to, Black Lives Matter movement and all of the things above and beyond that. So for us, it was saying, okay, we need to represent ourselves really professionally on an international scale. We need to build a brand that's represented well, professional, organized, clean, right? And that's what we did with our teams from the ground up. And that's why it reverberates through all the marketing materials we make, whether it's videos, animations, graphics. I trust my team with my life because I've given them I guess my proverbial life in
big. That's a big deal.
We'll say there. Like my, my professional well-being, I guess I could say, but more so just thinking because they understand what we're trying to build and they understand their input. And so when you have a authentic relationship with your organization, then when you go out and do things with different partners, whether it's on the international level as a professional, when you start to do that on a local level, yeah, you're not getting 100,000 views or 300,000 views just from Kansas City. That doesn't mean you can't make an impact, right? Yep. So we said, okay, Kansas City, this is where the impact needs to go, right? So for us, we say we can go international, we can make this big brand, but if we can pull results into the home that we're from, like that's really empowering. So that's where it's like, that's why this is a big deal, because we can go and win tournaments on an international level and then bring jobs back here to Kansas City. Yep. And that's like one of the coolest things. And that's why it's such a big deal is we could tap into that $1 billion market and bring that infrastructure and that job, all the jobs there, we could bring them right here, right into Kansas City. Cause no, it's not formalized yet. There's no, person that's leading the way only. Like it's up for grabs right now. We're still navigating. So I think that's why we come in and say, hey, there's some OGs in the space. They're doing a great job. There's some things that we think with our leadership team and the team that we've built that we can do some things better, and some things different than anyone's ever seen before. And we think that we can do that. And we can also stay connected to our hometown and our roots, and we can lift up our city as we go up. Right?
There's some really big parallels with KC Sports Network and what we're doing and trying to do things a little bit different on the sports media side and making it hyper local, making an impact for the people that live in the community with some of the things that we're doing, trying to give back. And we're 6 months old. You guys have been around for a couple of years, but the fact that you've made some of those community partners that you talked about. And one of the first things that jumped out to me was the Boys and Girls Club, what you guys are doing to give back to kids and to give back to the youth in the area. As a company that's only been around a couple of years, the fact that you have given back in such a big way and that you are, as a company, seeking out partnerships like that might not be a revenue generating thing for you, but is along the spirits of what you're trying to represent your company for. Can you talk a little bit about that particular partnership? And we use a lot of them. Yeah. Can we go with that one in particular? That's the first one that jumped out to me, saying, this is cool. This is different.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, for us, like, when we look at the marketing side of the business and the creative side of the business and the emotional side of the business, there's a lot there. But when we look at, like, okay, we can make a video or we can do some photos, but how can we make a real impact, right? Because that's like real marketing, is like doing something real and like that's actually impacting someone, that drives a real brand growth, right? So it's like we can do something that is positive and beneficial for young people that also helps advance some of our missions, which is just really educating the community, right? We want to, at large, we want to educate parents and kids alike on the future of the industry, but also how do I do it in a healthy way? How do I engage with gaming in a healthy, moderated fashion? How does that fit into my world? How do parents understand how to be supportive in that sense, and also productive in the way that they're parenting around that? Because there's not a lot of handbooks there yet, and people don't know what they don't know. So when we are able to build something with Boys and Girls Club that frankly doesn't exist in a lot of communities, right? Like when we were there was a kid that was on the console, and it was just one of the random students we were talking to, and they were like, "Hey, how did you feel about this?" And he's like, "Well, my console broke like 3 or 4 months ago, and now I can come here and I can go and I can do this, and I can actually and it's an inspiration for me," right? And so these young kids, they know the power of it. They just need those tools. So that's the first of many iterations that we want to see in the philanthropy that we do with our business.
And the other one was Sporting KC. I think anyone in the area, as far as like just areas that are growing, obviously with the KC Current and everything that they have going on, and Sporting KC is just another cool partnership that you guys have set up.
Yeah, I mean, I think at its core, right? Like, it's the whole great power comes great responsibility, and I think power is synonymous with like platform and the community that we've built. So it's like we want to be transparent, we want to be authentic, we want to like give back to the, and of course we want them to be fans too or not, but yeah, I think it's like we've worked with the mayor's office, we've worked with the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City, we've done stuff with Generation Esports, which is like figuring out a way to connect high schools and colleges on curriculum to where it's like, hey, this could be a great conduit for like STEAM, right? So you think about like, oh wow, like esports, like baseball's not just hitting a ball, right? Like there's a lot that goes into it, and it's the same thing with esports, right? Like whether it's you can be a team manager, or we have a guy getting his PhD in cognitive performance development that works with our teams to make sure that they stay in the flow and stuff, right? Because it's important. There's health and wellness, there's like production, there's graphics and all these things. So it's less about like, oh, I play games. It's more of like, yeah, this is a great way for you to like find your own community, find your own voice, find a way to like monetize, find a way to do something really fulfilling that's not on a traditional route.
Yeah, and like I said, I ask these questions, and it's coming from the greatest place possible, because when I want to know what a day-to-day looks like for you guys. And I know every day is probably a little bit different, but all the different things that you guys have going on. I know it's not from grandma's boy, but that's what I had in my head. So,
close.
what is the day to day?
Mark and I's day to day is drastically,
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes into it.
Here, you do your day.
Yeah, I want to hear just the differences of what you guys have going on.
So, I mean, a lot of what we do is, again, to build an international presence, you have to have a team that's international, right? So there's a lot of management that goes into that. So a lot of, management of younger creatives, younger team members that are also managers of other areas, right? So we're spending a lot of time, at least for me, in my department, it's overseeing creative. We're managing all the different sponsor and partner materials that we're creating or curating, whether that's events, video announcements, and animations. So we're doing all the creative side and the graphics and all the nitty gritty that comes with game days and things like that, right? There's a lot that goes into that. But then on the marketing side, there's also a ton of high level strategy and tactical work that's going on where, we're empowering some of these younger people on our team to go and solve different solutions and address different problems. So we're looking at, whether it's addressing each social media channel one by one and identifying a good, healthy strategy for that, or whether it might be, hey, how can we, figure out a different angle for this sponsor, right? So there's a lot of ideation. And the reason that there's a lot of that is because everyone's really excited and they have such a good time. Our teams, and we talked about this literally yesterday, and we were just talking about how everyone is doing stuff that they enjoy and they have fun doing it. And so the result is positive damn near every time, right? Because they're doing things that they enjoy, and it's like, they're just living what they know, right? And so that's really awesome for us. So for my day-to-day, a lot of that is management and empowering a lot of our team to go out and do that. But then also, of course, I'm spending a decent amount of time in the trenches with a few leadership members, just getting things done and just pushing things out. We're putting out a lot of partnered content, sponsored content, announcements. Every freaking week, we're picking up something new, something different, something fresh, right? So we've just got a lot going on. And sometimes we have to, Mark and I are very familiar with, up top stuff that we have to do, but then also the nitty gritty down in the trench work. And that comes from our philosophy of we would never expect people on our team to do stuff that we wouldn't do ourselves. And we live that every day. So
that's a great segue to what I do.
Yeah.
I want to hear what you do. What do you do?
I mean, no, I think it really is. I mean, we're at its core, it's a startup. It was really interesting to say, hey, KC Sports Network is 6 months old, and you guys are old. We're I don't think we feel young still, right?
Yeah, hold up, I'm not old.
You guys we're not old. Vested veterans in this industry.
Old. Yeah, old, sir. No, I think we're a startup, right? So what we do, for me, it's whether it's the P&L, working with sponsors. We're raising 2 million. We're coming up closing our 2 million. We've already had a seed round that we've already raised. So we have there's responsibilities back to our existing investors. There's responsibilities back to potential. So there's a lot of those conversations. A lot of awareness, right? A lot of conversation about, tell us about the old pioneers, man.
Just like this.
Yeah,
but you don't get to do this in a distillery in a beautiful place like this to necessarily talk about it, what you got going on. So hopefully you can. Hopefully it's a little different.
It's way different. This is amazing, by the way, and just beautiful and cool and delicious and amazing. So anyways, so I think there's that, right? And then, I think Sam alluded to, there's probably 100 people on our team. So, you have, working with legal and negotiating player contracts and with agents and, helping out there, and then making sure we're making the right decisions. And, that kind of 50,000 foot view, 10,000 foot view that, Sam talked about, there's that juxtaposition. There's the juxtaposition of Kansas City founded, globally driven. So we're making a lot of those decisions. There's working with publishers and tournaments and all those kind of things. So a lot of moving parts. But we wouldn't do it if it, wasn't fun and people didn't think it was awesome.
So for outside of the marketing and the content creation, when it comes to you're an esports team, you want to win. Is it leagues? Is it tournaments? What is game day? How often are game days?
Sure.
You have the different, can't think of the word, different games that the people play. How does the different titles, how does all of that work together, and how often do you have game days? We'll start there and then I'll ask the next part.
fundamentally the biggest difference between traditional sports and esports is like we're 24/7, 365,
Hmm.
right? The easiest analogy again is to think like if the Kansas City Pioneers owned all of the organizations here, like that's exactly right. Like different game days, different seasons, different times, etc. Right? So it's just like us, right? Like Madden season is different, and the cadence and frequency in which they play is different than like Rocket League. And there's qualifiers, and there's tournaments, and there's extra things. So we're always doing something. Really, is the moral of the story. As Sam was talking about, wrangling our amazing creative team. So that's really like it varies like dramatically, right? It's pretty volatile, and then of course it's an incumbent on like the more successful we are, like the more we play. For us, we play in tier one. The majority of sports that we play in, I would say 90% are tier one. So we're playing in the NFL, MLB with our team, and then there's a couple of other sports that are like franchise, which we're not playing in. Which is like League of Legends, Overwatch League, Call of Duty League. We have a Call of Duty Challengers team, which is called the AAA, right? So
Okay.
they're guys that have played in the before, and they're doing really well. But that's a like 25-30 million dollar franchise fee plus a high social capital net worth individual, that can kind of bridge and broker and a spot to come and put 100,000 fans occasionally to watch them play. So we definitely are not in that, right? You don't want to just jump right in and deploy capital to something like that, because you need a brand, you need a story, you need a mission, you need a community, fans, right? And then obviously you need the intuitive part, right? Like money. So I think that it varies, right? And to be successful, it's just like traditional, right? Like we have an entire recruiting team. We have team managers, we have player managers, we have people dedicated to looking at these nuanced tournaments, like who are some of the best one-on-one players in Rocket League, right? Or like who are some of the younger players coming up. So we do the same thing, right? We have Farm Club that look for people, and then we try to put together challenger teams, right? Like to put together like really good people and find some secret sauce and some magic and like elevate everybody up and go out and win some chips.
So how many people total do you have in your organization then, including all of your gamers, all of your athletes, all of the staff, content creators? Just how big and how widespread and how much reach does the Pioneers organization as we sit here today? What does that look like?
So there's about 100 of Kansas City Pioneers, which are, gosh, I'm like, there's about 100 of us. And that is staff members, professional athletes, content creators, et cetera, right? And then in terms of like our reach, we get about 50 million impressions a month off of our socials. And it's because of some of the sports we're in, some of the pros that we're in, some of the content creators. I'm sure you saw. We have a couple of Kansas City Chiefs,
I was going to ask about them next.
Right. That's a good. So then I'll pause. We also have like a Wimbledon, Jack Sock, who's from Kansas City. He's gold medalist Wimbledon.
Blue Valley North.
There you go. And then Marcus Edmond, right? So Mizzou, he's soon to be in China, Shanghai playing, but he's here right now, so he plays for us as well. And then some other folks, like some of them might have 8 million aggregate followers or something, so like when they flip on and they're playing, what they like and with their audience, people are paying attention. And so it varies on like what it looks like and sounds like, I guess, a good way to think about it.
How has COVID, I know this is, and I'll come back to the Chiefs guys, because that could be a whole different discussion, but just how has COVID impacted what you guys do in a good way, bad way, in the industry, not just as the Pioneers, but just industry wide? Everybody's moving to Zoom, and just all these like meetings are doing things that you guys probably have been playing in that space and a lot more better prepared for people in this industry than the rest of us that hadn't been quite as used to a lot of this stuff.
Well, I think that we were in a unique position where we had just formed the company, not even a year before COVID hit, right? So we were getting our feet wet, getting in the game, getting things going, getting some investment conversation going, and COVID hit, and it was this interesting transition where people went online in record numbers, right? And it was a moment when we were able to help us to drive home the point of importance that is the internet and gaming and esports, and it provided us a good spark of a moment to get online and to get out there and to find talent, find relationships. We were able to, you're able to scout on just the internet, right? Like you don't have to go to the game. The game's on TV, the game's free on Twitch all the time, right? So scouting is much more complicated, I would say, in some aspects, but also you have access that you wouldn't have in any other sport angle, right? So that's really unique. And so for COVID, for us, it was really a matter of like, how do you manage a team though, right? Because that's the challenge there.
Well, I mean, I would say one big difference to think about is like there were no LANs, right? So beyond everything you're saying, 100%, like for sure. Like the biggest core difference that kind of drove that, I mean, obviously COVID was the catalyst, but there was no big events, right? So there's not like, hundreds and, thousands of people filling the stadium watching people play, right? There's no worlds and there's no things like that, which that obviously impacted and forced exactly what Sam's talking about, right? And then the other thing that was really interesting, and you see this as an uptick on, engagement, there are more casual gamers are starting to climb up, right? And then there's also more casual gaming viewership going up. So people are making the switch from, and you can think about the evolution, right? Like people aren't watching traditional cable, and then it's OTT, right? Over the top content. And then now it's like, YouTube and Twitch.
My son, our 6-year-old son, watches people play video games like, oh my, like that's what he does.
He liked Roblox.
He watches Roblox. He's a lot of Minecraft, a lot of Preston. We watch a lot of Preston.
There you go.
But that's what everyone said, like every time. I mean, it's always Roblox. I swear.
Is it that hard to think that like, but yet like it's just what blows your mind that like Arrowhead has 70,000 people watching somebody throw a football?
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. But the way that like he will be teaching me things at YouTube for like we try to use for KC Sports Network every time I come over there, he's like, I want to buy merch. He's like, clicking on the pop up, and I'm like, we got to get a premium account. Like we got to get all this stuff done. My son's teaching me how to use YouTube and all this. But I want to ask about the 3 Chiefs, and I think there's 3, unless you guys have signed more this week that I'm not aware of. Andrew Wiley, McCole Hardman, and Armani Watts play with you guys, are part of the Pioneers. How did you get those guys get involved? What games are they like? What titles are they on, and just how does that work? And how has that helped you, and how cool is that for you guys?
Wiley was first, so he just reached out, like, which is like, wow, Andrew Wiley's in our DMs. That's cool. So shout out Andrew Wiley. And then was like, hey, I'm a gamer, and it wasn't like a misnomer to us, like you don't say. Like, of course, we know what we know is that like all of these athletes are like in their compression boots after the game playing like Call of Duty or Rocket League or whatever. Yeah. They just are. So it's not this like you don't say, right? And so of course like it was really cool. He's super into Pokemon, and he was just really interested in what we do. So we had a couple of conversations. It's like, yeah, this is really great. And the story is the exact same for Armani, is the exact same for Nicole. And the reason why I think is like super important, and Sam can elaborate about like what it means to connect to the community, but the reason why is because like it's a way for them to be a part of something that's different that people don't ask them about every single day, right? Like I'm sure when you talk to Andrew Wiley, you don't ask him about like, hey, when's the last time you pulled a dope Pokemon card? Probably not the convo.
I've talked to Andrew Wiley a lot. I've not talked to him about Pokemon, but now it feels like I missed out, because you learn about players and you learn about what they're into, and you get them away from what most people feel like they know them for, and they feel like they know who they are as a person because of what they do on a football field. And it couldn't be further from the truth when you find out these things like, hey, this is what they're into. They're away from it. They're into this stuff. It's cool. And I knew Andrew Wiley and Pokemon stuff just because of social media, but it seems like the rest of it with the gaming with Armani seems to be really into it. Obviously McCole and then Wiley. It's just a cool deal that they can do both, and that it doesn't get in the way of anything that these guys are trying to do.
I mean, they're just different people off the field, which I think is intuitive when you say that statement, but it's also not when you like have a conversation with them. And and then there's a couple of real practical examples of like, what we talk about a lot is like, you're not able to get out of the huddle and go like, hey, BJ, like this is your like 7th Chiefs game, man. Like really appreciate you coming. I want to shout you out in section, whatever, Like they don't get to do that, but on Twitch they can. Right? They can say like, hey, you've subbed for a long time. I really appreciate you. Thank you. You can have that dialogue. Like you can't get, I mean, imagine trying to get Nicole to sign something for you. But if you stop on his stream, like he'll probably talk to you, which is like, whoa, cool. Right? So like, it's just a different form of connection. And then what we talk to them about, right, which makes sense, is like, how do they, again, you think about different athletes in different sports of like, what a veteran is and pro, and like, when you've peaked and all this good stuff, like there's that. Gaming's arguably forever, right? Like, at least at a higher level. I would know. I mean, spoiler alert, I'm not a high level athlete, on either one, right? Like on anything, right? Like it's sad days. But but what I would say with confidence is that, when that went away, like the gaming and the community I built would allow me to connect a little bit better with my fans, right? So it allows them, I don't want to say like skip the org, skip the agent or whatever, but I am saying that, like, yeah, that's just something that they get to do personally, and they get to share a little bit. Like, of course, there's social media policies. We make sure that like nothing's disingenuous. We're not going to ask them to do anything. We have conversations with their agents and all this good stuff to make sure we're not like, hey, Nicole, you're sponsored by Nike, so you can't wear our Under Armour jersey. Like these are normal things. So we tailor to make it with him. So I think there's that, and then there's also just a really interesting dynamic of like whether you think this union of like traditional sports and esports continues to grow, right? It's not so much this union in this Venn diagram, more of it's like moving to overlapping. There's just sponsorship opportunities, right? There's a way to say, like, if I do build a really good audience, then like when I'm not playing football, like people will still be interested and like sponsor me. So it's a good form of revenue. It's a good way for them to engage with their audience. It's a good way for them to make experiences. It's a good way for them to take their passions off the field and like share it with other people.
And it's authentic because you're meeting people with what they're into, just like it is authentic. We absolutely love this place in Weston and Holladay Distillery, and the drinks are absolutely amazing. Again, BJ Kissel with two of the founders of the Kansas City Pioneers, and Mark Josey and Sam Kulikov. And we just got done talking about obviously the three Chiefs guys. I want to know, as we wrap this show up, I had a couple more questions for you guys. And the first one is, somebody sitting from Kansas City or a Kansas City supporter, somebody's pride of Kansas City, sitting at home and wants to know how to support you guys. They want to know, how do we get behind the Kansas City Pioneers? How do we support the athletes? How do we take pride in a hometown team and something cool that's new to the city and new to a lot of people? How do they support what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different ways. Some, depends on how interested you are in esports, right? So if somebody, a lot of folks that are finding out about us, they quickly hop on, because when you're from Kansas City and you like COD or you like Halo and you're like, wait, there's a team, you're like, heck yeah. It's like any sport. When you move to a different city or whatever, you're like, oh my gosh, we have a team. That's so cool. I get to watch them and support them. So I think from, parents to young kids alike, I think it's really coming and saying, look, we have plenty of social platforms. We're on every social media pretty much imaginable, except for MySpace and the dead platforms there. But yep. So we're on all those, right? Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all different content cater to those platforms, right? You can find us there. We're also on Twitch all the time, right? So we're competing constantly, which you can find updates through all of our social media. So every single week we're playing. So through our social media channels, you can see how often we're playing and what we're playing in and that type of stuff. So we also have our website, so kcp.gg. There's some information there about some of our professional teams and different staff members and stuff like that. But ultimately, I think the big ask in general, as a generalization, is just saying, hey, if you're interested in like STEAM, if you're interested in technology, if you're interested in entrepreneurship and empowering young people and finding new solutions for Kansas City to be a next hub of something great and big, like, we want you to recognize that it's not just us. There's other people in Kansas City doing great things. And if we all work together under this esports mantra, that we can do something great. So yeah, you may not understand it fully, but know that it has the power to change the lives of so many people in this city. And so if we just let our barriers down and support each other, just like we do with like KC Current, right? The stuff that they're doing is amazing, and that's record-breaking stuff, right? So it's like, that's what we need, that, and what's what we're getting, but we want that to continue. We want people to know that we're doing this for them, for our city, for us. But our hashtag since the very beginning has been literally my city. Like that's been since day one.
And I think it's like so you can be a fan. Like I can make it real easy too. You can just be a fan. Like come just cheer for them, watch us, like follow us on our socials. If you want to take the easy route, that would be great. And it's interesting because, like, just to put it in perspective, like our Rocket League team last year, they finished like sixth. Actually, they finished seventh in North America. So best team in North America. We're talking like NRG, which is like, multi-million-dollar Shaquille O'Neal's part owner, like whatever. We were playing them. 300,000 people were watching us play. a ball kick or a car kick a ball into a goal, right? Like that's if like what is that like 6 times the K and you know a couple times, right? Whatever, 3 times, 4 times the you know arrowhead.
Yep.
And so that's kind of the sometimes hard to wrap your brain around, where it's like that's pretty big, right? That seems like a lot of people to me to watch us play, and they're extremely talented, and so like that like. So for us to just understand, like, you know, maybe it's not in a physical space, but it's super big in a digital space.
One of the things that I always kind of prided myself on and felt like it was kind of like the core value of what we were trying to do at the Chiefs was that with Chiefs Kingdom and Chiefs fans, and I think this is the same for fans of anywhere, anything for anything, is that if you feel like you know the people who are involved and there's like a real like emotional connection to the person and not just to the performance, that fandom becomes that much stronger. So when you guys talk about storytelling and marketing and getting your story out there in front of people in Kansas City will support people that are representing Kansas City in a great way. To your point of let's all support everyone. It's just putting a face, it's putting a name, and the way that you guys are doing that, the way you're telling your stories and getting it out there and partnering with the community, like I said earlier, has been absolutely phenomenal. So the last thing I want to ask you guys, besides before we let everyone go, you got to tell everybody where to follow you guys, exactly where to go, give exactly where to go. But what goals do you guys have? Where do you want to see the Kansas City Pioneers 2 years from now if everything goes according to plan of what you guys want?
Yeah, I'll start with one. We don't think it's hyperbolic that we're going to be here for 50 years, right? 2, we want to definitely be in the same breadth and depth of you know fandom and impact in our community in Kansas City and globally, just like some of the wonderful you know sports orgs that are here. Very specifically, we'll close, like I'll put my you know put the P&L hat on. Like very specifically, what we'll do is we're going to continue to get teams. We're going to continue to compete at a high level. We're going to win you know a Valorant championship. We're going to go out and win you know a Rocket League championship. You know we're going to go out and raise like a Series A. So that'd be you know kind of the next thing for us there. And continue to do it the right way with the right people.
Cool. And as you say, like the Valorant championship and all these things, what would be like the equivalent if somebody doesn't get that, like the Super Bowl, this, that, or the other? Like, what's the thing? Like, if you guys go win, like Kansas City needs a parade. Like, what's the big deal? Like the thing that if you guys achieve this goal, that it's something like we're making T-shirts, we're throwing a party, we'll do it upright.
First, I should be remiss if I didn't say I want to win championships and everything. So I'm sure our Gears of War folks and our Women's Rocket League team and our Beast Mode, right? So all of them, we want to win championships. I think it's the time, right? Like it depends on what the biggest sport is, right? So right now, Halo is huge, right? Okay. So like if you've played any kind of gaming, Halo's around for a while. They're Halo, you know, Microsoft, Xbox getting ready to come into Halo Infinite, and their first big like LAN event, you know, we're all flying out, the team, leadership, some other folks, social media content, whatever. We're all flying out to Raleigh, North Carolina. We'll do a boot camp a week before, so that'll be super fun. And then we'll go compete. Like if we go crush that and win that, like that will be super dope. Like that's a great start. Maybe it's a coaster. Maybe it's not a T-shirt yet. No, we'll for sure do T-shirts. So that would be a good one. And then Valorant would be huge. That's one of like we think, and it's just like you know viewership and fans, right? Like the NFL is different than you know the Major League and et cetera. So there's some nuances there, but you know the right off the jump. Was that 6 weeks? We'll be in Raleigh. Is it Raleigh or Raleigh? I should know this. Is it Raleigh or Raleigh?
I think it's Raleigh.
Is it Raleigh? Okay, Tucker says it's Raleigh.
Raleigh.
All it is.
Tucker Franklin. Dynamite dropped in there.
I know. Right. Did you like that?
How can people follow you guys? How can they support you specifically?
Okay, they can find us anywhere with the social media tag Pioneers GG. So it's just Pioneers GG. That's on everything.
Follow it. Follow it. They are doing some phenomenal stuff. Again, that is Mark Josey and Sam Kulikov from the Kansas City Pioneers, the professional multidiscipline esports organization here in Kansas City. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on this brand new first episode of Sometimes Weekly Sports and Stuff. We will be coming to you guys each week with different Kansas City area sports themed things, hopefully with companies and people making the same kind of impact that you guys are doing. It's been phenomenal to watch. Respect what you guys are doing, and we'll try to keep up the pace here at KC Sports Network with everything you guys have going on. We appreciate it.
Let's go. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.